I'm going to talk about gender equality, and in particular, gender equality in economics and in business. Gender equality as a matter of growth and development. So, first of all, gender equality is a fundamental issue for human rights, but also a fundamental issue for economic growth and development. But if you see this graph, we have the Global Gender Gap Index of the World Economic Forum, and here you see that although gender gaps in many dimensions have been closed, for instance, in education or in health, we have equality between men and women on these indicators. If you look at economics and politics, we don't have equality. We are very far from reaching equality between men and women. So this graph is very, very important. And in particular, think about Italy. In Italy, we have a labor force participation rate of female, which is 46%, so less than 1 woman out of 2 works in Italy. That's really crazy. It's very difficult to survive in this man-dominated labor market, I can tell you, also from my personal experience. You know, if you are a mother, this is even more difficult. I was very good as a student since primary school, let's say, until the end of the PhD, but then I was pregnant, 28 years old. So I can say it has been very difficult to be successful in my job. I should say twice as difficult as other girls of my age without children, and maybe 3 times more difficult than a man. But we can also say that your energy increases if you have to take care of children and to work and be successful in a job. So that's also an essential ingredient, let's say. So going back to our gender gap indicators, we are here, this graph, we have the glass ceiling. What's a glass ceiling? These are the obstacles that women face when they want to make up their own careers, so to reach top positions. Here you have the percentage of women in boards in European countries, and we can see that in major companies. So here you can see that even in France, Belgium, Germany, the percentage of women in boards in these companies is lower than 12%. So very few women reach top positions. In Italy, it's much lower again. So basically, all women in boards know each other very well. So, but why is it important to have more women? It's very important to have a female occupation and women in top positions on the labor market, because female occupation is a key engine for world development and growth. And we all know this. This is because women are as educated as men, even a little bit more. They are as competent as men. So having more women involved in the economic process means wealth, means development, means growth. It also means a virtuous circle. Why? Because more work of women creates the demand for additional jobs and for additional work. And again, there are other positive consequences. There is a better quality of life. Why? Because 2 incomes in a family means higher possibility and also reduces the risk of being in poverty, for instance, or this occupational risk, or also family risks. So at the end, when there are 2 incomes in the family and when women work, also fertility is higher. So there is also these positive consequences, because it's easier to take the decision of having kids. And finally, there is another positive consequence, which is higher performance of firms. A large literature now says that when women reach top positions, when there is a female leadership, this is a positive correlation with the indicators of performance of firms. So this is really something very important. And so why do we observe these gender gaps? So what are the causes, and then what can we do? So first of all, there is really a very important issue in terms of culture, in terms of gender stereotypes. You see, We have here reported, I have here reported this question. A preschool child suffers if her mother works. So this is World Value Survey. So it's a survey, it's questions asked to all citizens all over the world. In Italy, more than 80% of the citizens say yes, they agree with the statement. It's true. A preschool child suffers. So it's very difficult for a mother to work and be a good mother because there's kind of gender stereotypes, let's say culture. That's not the only element, of course, that determines gender gaps. There are many other things. First of all, the labor market. What happens in the labor market? The demand for men is much higher than the demand by the firms of women because they think that maternity is highly costly. So that's a big problem for many firms, and we know that that's not necessarily true, but this is what happens. And then we have this other thing, which is the intra-household division of labor. You know, for instance, in Italy, we have estimated that women work 80 minutes per day more than men, if you sum up work done in the family, so domestic work or care work and work done on the market, which is really unbalanced. It's really difficult to survive in this kind of world. And then there is another element, which are family policies and the welfare state, because we know welfare state can be also very generous, especially in Mediterranean countries for some reason, but not for family, not for childcare services, not for family policies. We spend really little. In Italy, we spend only 1.3% of GDP on family policies. In France, they spend more than 3%, and the indicators are a little bit better. So, what are the best policies? At the end, what can we do to solve a little bit this gender gaps problem and have these positive consequences in terms of economic growth and development? So we have to distinguish two types of measures, let's say. So the first one are measures that try to promote access of women in the labor market. And these are, for instance, fiscal incentives, parental leaves, in particular paternity leaves. So the father had to stay at home a little bit also then when they have children. Otherwise, that's not going to work. And childcare services that helps families in reconciliation policies between working and taking care of children. On the other side, we have other policies which are called best practices by the companies. There are policies that try to improve, to promote the position of women in careers. So reducing the glass ceilings and helping women to reach top positions. And you have a lot of these practices from networking, coaching, mentoring, and many other type of interventions and gender quotas. Gender quotas are a quite controversial issue, let's say. Why? Because on one side it means that we are going to equalize the outcomes, so we are going to put women in top positions just by law. And so this is true. If there is discrimination, this helps. But many people say that at the end, what determines gender gaps is not a real discrimination, but it's just choices. Women related to motherhood, fertility, and to their own preferences. So at the end, this is not going to solve any type of problem. And the critics of gender quotas also say that at the end there is a big problem in terms of the quality. Why? Because what happens is that when you introduce this type of measure, the quality of the people may decrease because you are forced to put women into a body, for instance, in business or in a company or in politics. So it's not exactly true that you are going to select the better people. And so the quality can decrease. But this argument is not very convincing for me. First of all, because I am an economist, and this argument has never been proved empirically, let's say. So there are no data, no studies that really prove that this is true. And second, because there is also some evidence going exactly in the opposite direction. What happens when gender quotas, when you are forced to introduce women in top positions? What happens is that if the pool of women among which you have to select is sufficiently qualified, and we know that this is true because women are as educated as men, as competent, that's true everywhere. So there is no doubt about that. So if this is the case, you are just going, with gender quotas, you are just going to open the competition among the whole pool without restricting your attention only in the group of men. So opening the competition means higher quality at the end, also for the men. The men themselves will be more accurately selected. And we know that this is happening a little bit in our country. In Italy now we have a law on gender quotas in boards of listed companies, and this is what is happening. More women are entering, but just because they were not considered before, because this is a very man-dominated labor market, a very man-dominated place. So the quality increases and the quality of men themselves and the average quality may increase. And there is another important consequence. So what's the consequence? Another important thing is that when you know as a woman that you have the chance to reach top positions, you enter the competition. You are more likely to enter the competition. Why? Because if you know that you have no chances, so better maybe not to try. So again, since men are more overconfident usually, especially when they have to compete against women, and women are more reluctant to take part into the competition, knowing that they have higher chances to be successful, it's a very good thing because they try. So they enter the competition. So an enlarged pool of talents that compete means that a better quality at the end will be selected. So that's really good also for the companies. Okay, so how can we conclude? Women meet talents because women are educated as men, competent as men, qualified as men. Women mean business because we know that female occupation is a key engine of growth, is a key engine to produce additional work, and so a virtuous circle, economic development and growth. But still, we observe very high gender gaps in the labor market, in the access, participation to the labor market, and in reaching top position. But we know we are really now, these are the years of the war of talents, they say, okay? So it's very important to take up the challenge. What's the challenge? To promote a balanced representation, a balanced presence of both gender, men and women, in all places, in all economic places, so from the access to the economic decision making. Thank you.